In trying to find a career in the film industry, I initially wasn't quite certain which area I wanted to focus on, and I was obviously really interested in lots of different areas of the film industry, quite interested in the music side and in production design, and very interested in working with actors and writing and so many different components of the way films are made. So I really wanted to get on as many sets as I could and work with other filmmakers, see how they would embrace the creative process. I worked for a bit on some really big sets, worked on Matrix 2 and 3 and some big productions at Fox Studios, and then little productions and commercials, and really sort of getting a sense of across the board. And I think it's about not being too precious about doing anything, even if you're just hanging out with people, even doing it for free sometimes when you first start out, making coffee or doing what you can to sort of make connections. Sometimes those things really pay off and you form friendships and relationships with people, and they can be something that ends up paying off later on in ways that you never thought. So I think it's really getting in there and doing what you can at the first level, and then finding out your own voice and the thing that attracts you the most about the industry and what you really want to do as a young artist. You don't want to sort of deal with big issues and have people feel like they're being preached to, or that it's really boring or really maudlin or depressing. But you don't want people to just go to your film and just eat popcorn and forget about it. So it's finding that balance of lightness but also complexity. And I think that is really tricky. I think that's all about how you collaborate with everyone that you're working with, finding the right tone. And sometimes it can be very difficult to actually get that right. And it's certainly a process of figuring out what you want that to be. And from the very beginning, I really wanted the film to be an entertainment piece, to feel that it would be optimistic and hopeful when people left the cinema, not depressing and that they would just leave the cinema feeling like they had just gone through the ringer, but by the same token that the film will raise issues that are relevant to their lives. For an Australian film, our budget was average sized, and it was kind of very tight really when you think about the fact that we had a completely offshore shoot. We were shooting in Calcutta, and that we were using that relationship with an international team. So logistically it was quite a challenge, you know, working with that kind of a budget for an international shoot. I think if our budget was any larger, it would have been very difficult to control the elements that we were trying to do. And I think sometimes when a budget gets so big, there's a sort of the risk that you won't be able to control the creative process. But I think that we had a nice balance between being able to have very senior actors, very senior creatives involved with the production who were willing to be part of the process. So we kind of have, I think, achieved much more than our budget. And I think we've done that because there's a passionate commitment from everybody. So I think that would only have been achieved within the kind of process that we'd all decided to be a part of.
Good. You did that.
I think it's a really exciting time for the industry at the moment. There's some fantastic filmmakers in our industry, and some beautiful films that have been released and will be released. And I think more and more Australians are starting to go back to the cinema to watch Australian films, and I think that's because films are starting to become more universal, bigger in nature than perhaps they might have been, and the complexities of the issues that they're covering seem to relate to people's lives more than maybe they might have a year ago. I'm not sure why that is, but it's a great kind of optimistic viewpoint I have on the industry at the moment. As a filmmaker, I'm really interested in the creative process, about collaborating with people that are very senior people and also people that might be emerging artists, and trying to find that way of blending the two. That's the thing that really interests me, is not just what we're making but how we make it, and glimpsing into worlds that we maybe never seen before, and having access to people who have got stories or viewpoints on the world that are rare and interesting. So certainly working with people that connect to me on that level, I think that's really where I'm most focused. I think it's so hard to figure out exactly what my favourite movies are. I think it changes daily. For this film, I was really inspired by a lot of the Italian neo-realists like Rossellini and De Sica, Fellini. I'm a big fan of Ingmar Bergman, particularly Through a Glass Darkly. But particularly for the resonances in terms of how we formed this film, we watched a lot of films like Babel, Last King of Scotland, Constant Gardener, films that had been shot in exotic locations but had an authenticity to the approach and a kind of epic quality. So big screen frames but had an intimacy in terms of the performance style. So we kind of looked at those films as a reference point for The Waiting City and then figured out a unique look for the film of its own.